This is Omar Woodburn for New Street Culture, and today I've got my boy in Darren, and I previously worked with Darren, and we worked together for a while. We had lots of deep discussions about a lot of deep things. Darren's previously shared with me a lot of his own experiences with racism. So I want to start off with, when I'm talking about current affairs, I'm talking about the death of George Floyd, I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, I'm talking about the protests that have been happening worldwide, nationwide. What do you think? What are your personal thoughts and opinions on the death of George Floyd?
I think it was tragic. It shouldn't have happened at all. Police are there to serve and protect. They're there to, and that means for everybody, not just law-abiding citizens. That's also for people who do break the law.
Yeah.
They're supposed to de-escalate. They're supposed to make sure that the situation is calm, the situation is safe for everyone around there, and deal with it as efficiently, as quickly as possible. It shouldn't have happened. George Floyd should have just been packed into the vehicle, taken to a courthouse for him to be tried under a fair institution. It's terrible. It absolutely is terrible.
Do you think it was racially motivated?
Well, they have done an investigation on Derek Chauvin, and there are some evidence to point towards he has had racially provoked biases towards the black community and stuff like that. He has gone beyond his duties. Let's just put a really soft term with that. He's gone beyond his duties a number of times. I think there is an element of race into it because there is a stereotype attached to people of ethnic minorities relating with crime, and I think that's a terrible stereotype, and it needs to be dismantled because
I agree.
Not all black people are criminals. Not all Asian people are terrorists. Not all white people are racist. So
yeah, that's true.
We need to understand that and dismantle these stereotypes. Like, even if it's a subconscious stereotype, people don't understand that these subconscious stereotypes can form a bias.
Yeah.
You arrive on the scene and you see, say for example, a white guy just playing the part of someone with these stereotypes, a white guy doing the same crime.
Yeah.
Like, you may have a certain bias to think, oh, it's just a mistake and stuff like that. But then when you see, say for example, I don't know, an Asian guy or a black guy doing that crime, there's a stereotype that comes with it, and you're like, okay, this might be something more, but it shouldn't be there. And
how do we? I think that's an interesting point that you touched on. Mm-hmm. Like, how do we dismantle those stereotypes? Because I always think, like, obviously stereotypes come from somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I also think that, like, there's often a small group of people that kind of tarnish the representation of a larger group of people. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
And it's like I saw a meme on Instagram this morning actually, and it was talking about the representation of protesters. Mm-hmm. It was saying, if we judge protesters by the small group that go out and loot and say that all protesters are, like, protesting is negative, then why don't we judge the police force in the same way and say that you've got a small group that are racist or killing black people or non-whites or whatever, why aren't we tarnishing the whole police force with the same brush? Mm-hmm. But obviously it's wrong either way. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? But how do we dismantle the stereotypes?
Well, everyone's got their own responsibility. Like, for me as an Asian man, there is a very fun, I find it a funny stereotype that all Asian people are well, in my experiences, all Asian people have been deemed as, terror threats, one might say, or dangerous or aggressive or something like that. It's my responsibility to embody the stereotype I want people to look at me as. If I want people to deem me as a safe person, if I want people to deem me as a member of the society, I've got to act like a member of society. Yeah. Like, there's a supermarket near me. I won't name it because, well, you won't go to it. you won't go to it if I say it. But basically, I'll go into the supermarket. Yeah. My area is a predominantly white area, so I'll go into that supermarket. I get a lot of funny looks. I get the security guard following me around. Yeah. And I could handle that two ways. I could either be super aggressive and say, why are you following me around? you know,
Which a lot of people would.
which a lot of people do
Yeah.
and would do in that situation.
Yeah.
Or I can do what I do now, turn around, big smile on my face, non-threatening, and say, "Can I help you?"
Yeah.
That is my responsibility,
Yeah.
and it's the responsibility of all ethnic groups to dismantle their stereotypes that are attached to the ethnic groups. But it's up to, I don't like referring to people as white people and black people, but for the people that hold these stereotypes and
Yeah.
allow this bias to fuel their fear, they have a responsibility to understand when that stereotype is fueling their actions.
I'm with you.
You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
And if they, so say for example, if I walk into that supermarket and the white woman shopper
Yeah.
sees me, instead of giving me a bad look, she needs to recognize, oh, he's just another guy.
Yeah,
He's just
yeah.
another shopper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sometimes I think that like, bless man, I think that it's understandable to some degree if you're experiencing that every time you go into that supermarket. Not every time you're gonna be able to manage it in the same way, like in a polite
You've
way.
got to be thick-skinned. You've got to be thick-skinned. If everyone's thin-skinned in this world, then you know what? We're no better than the people we're trying to educate almost.
I hear
You know
ya.
what I mean?
I hear you.
Like if an eye for an eye makes the world go blind.
Yeah,
Fire with fire, the whole
The whole
forest
world
burns
burns
down.
down.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm with you.
So you've got to be better. You've got to hold yourself to a higher standard. You can't drop to the standards of hate, bigotry, and fear.
I'm with you.
You've got to look at yourself and be calm, peaceful, loving to everything around you.
At the same time, though, don't you think that people like always take advantage of like? Because I personally have experienced this myself, where I feel like when I try and keep like that moral compass, I think people take that as a weakness, and people just take your kindness for a weakness.
Well-
And it's not until you show them like, listen, like I would feel like, yo, the only way that I can phrase it is like, I feel like sometimes I have to show people, listen, I'm not a pussy. Like I'm just being kind, innit? But don't keep pushing me. That's annoying.
Well, that's a. You have to, behind your words, put a level of sternness in there.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And there's a concept, because I've been training martial arts for the majority of my life.
Yeah.
There's a concept in Chinese kung fu
yeah,
of the gentle hand and gentle fist and hard fist.
yeah.
And the whole gentle fist and hard fist is this should always be your first weapon,
Okay,
but understand that maybe sometimes you will have to use this, but it must be a last resort.
I'm with you.
And if you understand that, then you know you build like an invincible barrier to you.
Okay.
And if people do try and take advantage of it, that's their own fault. I always say this: if you try and educate someone who is bigoted, who
Yeah.
is ignorant,
Yeah.
and they're not getting it, walk away from it. Then
with
you're not
that.
going to change them that day. It's going to be someone else's experience to change them.
That will have to change them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So-
Because if you're talking to a brick wall, what's the one way to get over that? Walk away from the brick wall and talk to someone else.
I do agree that like sometimes people like they're not gonna want to learn or be re-educated or understand your perspective. So sometimes I do think that you're wasting your breath. But I do think that everyone deserves the opportunity to be given a different perspective and shown like a different side. And I do agree with you. To be fair, I do think that like when you return and you fight fire with fire, like in some instances, all you're gonna feel like is you just prove them right. Like they're gonna turn around and say, "Well, look, I told
Exactly.
you." As a black man, like for me, like I think that black people are often tarnished as aggressive. And like if I fight fire with fire, I feel like sometimes they turn around and say, "Well, I told you that you're aggressive."
Yeah. I knew you were aggressive,
Yeah.
and now you just gave it to me. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
And then you just gave me that justification for my
Yeah.
bias.
yeah,
You know what I mean? You haven't given me any contrary evidence.
yeah,
Like, I had a friend the one time. I call him a friend, but this comment wasn't so friendly. He goes to me, Darren, you're not like other Asian guys. And I looked at him and I went, what do you mean I'm not
What
like
does
other
that
Asian
mean?
guys? And he goes, oh, normally Asian guys are so, you can't trust them, or stuff like that.
serious.
And I was like, well, what makes you think that?
Yeah, yeah,
Did you have one experience with one Asian guy and, like, you know, it was a bad experience? Because it could just be he was an untrustworthy fellow, regardless of his ethnicity.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
and
I've had experiences like that.
but I gave him the contrary evidence.
Yeah,
He could trust me, and now that stereotype is dismantled.
I'm with you.
You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
Now he has to think twice before.
But does he now only feel like he can trust you, but he still can't trust other Asians?
Well, could be that. I don't know.
Do you know what I mean?
You know what I mean?
Because I had a similar experience. I had a woman tell me that I was nice for a black guy, and that I was funny and easy to get along with for a black guy. And I walked away from that experience feeling pissed. I was thinking to myself, hang on, what does that... And the thing is, when people say things like that, they actually think that's a compliment to you. They don't realise how rude and offensive it is.
Like, but then again, I could have easily gone really aggressive with that friend of mine.
Yeah.
And then confirmed an even worse bias that Asians are aggressive and untrustworthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's two ways to handle it. There's straight away you pull out you pull out your guns and fire your shots, or you just say, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's think about it. Let's talk about that for a second.
I think the key is, like, what I'm starting to understand now is not to respond emotionally, because when you're emotionally triggered, you don't act logically.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you're more likely to act like in an aggressive manner or in a violent manner, or just to fight fire with fire.
But it's very hard to do that.
It takes a skill.
Yeah,
it's a skill.
It's very hard to do that, and it takes. I encourage everybody. Meditation is key.
Yeah.
Because you understand what you're doing at every moment in time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I know my hands are moving like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know what I'm saying. So, yeah.
That's cool. So, what do you think about the Black Lives Movement, Black Lives Matter movement?
You know what? It was exciting to start off with. You know what I mean? Like, you see all these people taking the streets, banding together and everything like that. And,
yeah.
You know, it was great to see, like, it wasn't just black and sort of black people. It wasn't just Asian people. It was black, Asian, Oriental. Oops, sorry. I don't know the term for that. Sorry, South Asian and Far East and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And even white people coming in, and you know
all ethnicities.
All ethnicities.
It's full representation, I think.
And everyone banded together.
Yeah.
But with all the good, there is always some form of bad, and we've touched upon this with the rioting and the looting and stuff like that. And,
yeah.
But that's more of in America with the whole looting situation. I've not personally seen it here myself.
Yeah.
With the rioting, yes, I've seen it here. That's wrong. That's a bit getting beyond the point, because again, you're just feeding into the stereotype of, okay, right then, you've got all these ethnicities.
Yeah.
And we all know that the media in England is far right.
Yeah.
And supports the right wing.
Yeah.
The problem is, that's the only thing they're going to show on the news.
I agree.
When you see people tipping over statues.
Yeah.
And tossing them into lakes and stuff like that. Yeah. That's all they're going to show.
Yeah.
And then you're feeding into not only their stereotype in the systemic racism that they have, but also the stereotype of these viewers. And we already saw on Saturday with the far right coming to protect the statues and then get into a scuffle with the police officers.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, which I find is incredibly ironic, because they were there to protect the statue of Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
The police officers were there to do that as well. They got into the fight with police officers, and then they started doing Nazi salutes when Winston Churchill was against the whole Nazi culture. So it's ridiculous.
Just uneducated.
It's ridiculous. But again, like, you've got one of my favourite figures in history, Mahatma Gandhi. Advocate of non-violence and advocate of non-violent protests and peaceful protests.
Yeah,
that is bravery, and he took responsibility if anyone came out of line. And
how did he take responsibility?
He condemned it straight away. Condemned it, and he said, "No, we don't do that."
Okay.
Personally, go to the leaders of that area and say, "We don't do that."
Yeah.
Instead, we'll do this: marches, walks, solidarity.
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi even fasted.
Okay.
Fasted himself, did damage to himself more so than anything else, because he understood that was the way to get the point across. I remember
peacefully.
Yeah, I remember Martin Luther King watching a video of him saying the quote that he condemns non-violence because all condemns violence. Sorry, because all violence will promote is more violence.
Alright, we just had to have a little relocation, but so you said you can remember where you're taking off from, where you were.
Yeah, I can. We were talking about Black Lives Matter, rioting and looting,
Yes.
and how if you want a plasma screen TV, you can have a plasma screen TV. All you got to do is make sure that you're protesting for the right cause. That's all right. But no, I don't actually condone that. But no, we have a responsibility as people who represent that movement, who represent that group, to condemn those actions and keep going with our peaceful protests and keep going with our peaceful set of actions and actually doing something that is going to incite actual change and not just surface level change. You know what I mean?
There are a group of people that will say that great amounts of change haven't come without violence. Like that's the violence is what has been the main driver and the main point of reference to them to say this is when we made a difference. This is when they actually took us seriously.
Yeah, this is where we took it seriously. I remember there was a quote by Spike Lee, famous director in America, when he was talking about America itself.
Yeah.
And anything built on shoddy foundations will eventually fall apart. That goes for the same for the whole Black Lives Matter movement and, trying to dismantle this systemic racism. If we do it via violence, which is a shoddy foundation, it's not very strong at all. Anger is not a very strong emotion. It's a very easy emotion to tap into.
Yeah.
And we succumb to it.
Yeah.
That's a shoddy foundation. So everything that you would have built on that shoddy foundation is just going to fall apart. Whilst peaceful protests and going through proper channels and actually making a difference to the laws. For example, how do we think this comes about? Say for example this systemic stereotypes that with the police and other ethnic groups, it comes from improper training.
Yeah.
Why? Because they are lacking funding and anyone can be it. The best indication in the world, I believe, is Finland. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's Finland. The reason being, because to be a teacher in Finland, you need a master's degree.
Okay.
You need thousands of hours of teaching experience.
Okay.
You need to go through multiple tests. You need to be retested, I believe, as well.
Okay.
So it's a prestigious role, and it also pays very well compared to the teachers here.
Yeah.
Pays incredibly well, almost as much as like doctors, I believe, as well.
Okay.
If you want the police to be better, you need to make it more of a prestigious occupation.
Yeah.
You need to make the entry requirements ridiculous.
Yeah.
And which makes it a very exclusive thing to be a part of, meaning you will only get the best of the best, and you also need to make sure pays well as well, because people will then want to do their jobs properly. You know what I mean? Putting performance quotas in, putting performance reviews in, making them retest their fitness and all that stuff. Why do you think policemen go straight for the guns when they come to a violent situation and not try and de-escalate it with words? Because they don't know how to. The training is not as good as it used to be.
I'm with that.
You know what I mean?
I'm with that. With regards to the Black Lives Matter movement, do you think that it represents you as an Asian man?
Yes and no, and this is where I believe like we might differ in terms, but we'll reach a compromise. We'll reach a compromise. Yes and no. I do believe, like from what I've seen in the protest, if I go by what I've seen in the protest, then yes, because I've seen Asians there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've seen Asians there. Do I believe it realistically? No, not really, because I have a friend of mine. This is anecdotal, but I do have a friend of mine, and I've gone through this as well, stemming back from school and everything as well, that I felt secluded by even the black members of my society.
Okay.
And my friend, he's a Sikh like me. I was raised as a Sikh.
Yeah.
My mum and dad are both Sikhs. And he was trying to promote, during the whole Black Lives Matter movement, he was trying to, raise awareness on what happened to the Sikhs in 1984. They were massacred. But basically, thousands of Sikhs got massacred.
Yeah.
And then he tried to raise awareness about what happened in 1999. Now that I know quite a bit about. That was the massacre at Jallianwala Bagh in India, in Amritsar. Now what happened there was Reginald Dyer and a whole group of Gurkhas and fellow soldiers from the Indian Army and the British Raj opened fire on a group of protesters,
Yeah.
and they were unarmed. They were having non-violent protests, so peaceful protests,
Yeah.
and they were basically just slaughtered.
Yeah.
They opened thousands of rounds of machine gun fire on them, and Reginald Dyer was afterwards, by some people in Parliament, lauded as a hero.
Yeah.
Funny fact, actually, Winston Churchill, the very people that they were trying to desecrate the statue of, was the only one that said the actions were abhorrent, which means they were just terrible.
Yeah.
So, funny fact for you there. But he was trying to raise awareness on that, and other than from other Asians, he didn't get a single share response
Like any support.
from anyone from the white from the white ethnicity, the black ethnicity,
Yeah.
or the Oriental ethnicity. Oh, I said it again. And when you go off that evidence, and from what I've experienced, again anecdotal, it's just my experience. I felt in certain situations that I've stuck up for the black ethnicity, and I was left out to dry
Okay.
in certain situations. Now, it's not to be by everybody. It could have just been select people at that time.
Yeah.
And also, when I was talking to someone who was heading over to the protest for the Black Lives Matter movement, and I said, look, could you just raise awareness of what also Asian people are going through as well? And they said to me, oh, Asian people haven't gone through it as bad as black people.
Well, I think there is a lot of like comparison at the moment.
And it's like, it doesn't matter about comparison. And also, you're not very well educated on that either. So you can't make a snap judgment on it. If you're not very well educated on something, then why you can't make a
You can't make a comment if you're not educated on something.
Exactly. And then when I told her about the Jallianwala Bagh, she was like, oh my God, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Now and I think that's why I say yes and no. Yes, I do. I like to believe that yes, we're all represented by Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
But then if you actually go by the anecdotal evidence
I'm with you.
that I've experienced and what other people have experienced, then no.
I think that for me personally, I understand wholeheartedly like your experience and how you feel.
Because it shouldn't be a
with regards to
comparison.
that.
Wrong is wrong.
I think that that's true. Wrong is wrong. But I think that a lot of people, I think the black community feel as though they have had it the worst in history. I think that they look at the situation.
Well, if you go by history, it's actually the Jews.
Well, that's another debate.
Exactly.
That's another debate.
If you go by, if you want to truly draw up comparisons, which
Yeah.
you shouldn't do because wrong is wrong in my eyes. If someone does something wrong, then it is wrong, regardless of the scale or the magnitude of it.
So would you say that your all lives matter as opposed to Black Lives Matter?
See, all lives matter sounds better, but the far right seem to have hijacked it. You know what I mean? To kind of undermine.
For me, the whole point behind Black Lives Matter is that we feel as though
Yeah.
we're at the bottom. Like we feel as black people, we're not considered. Like
Yeah.
if we take history into account and we take present day into account, we feel as though in society we're considered as the bottom rung, the bottom of the bottom, like the lowest of all different races. So by saying Black Lives Matter, we actually feel as though, well, I personally, I speak for myself, I feel as though if Black Lives Matter, then all lives will matter.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like as an umbrella term,
Yeah.
everybody comes underneath that. Taking your argument into account, obviously I can't really debate with you about who's had it worse in comparisons when you're talking about the Jews and stuff like that.
Because
I haven't done all of that research.
and that is a problem. That is a root cause of this entire problem. What were you taught in history at school?
In history at school, we were
'Cause
just taught
I remember.
British history, that's it really.
We were taught Britain's best bits.
Yeah.
Battle of Hastings, 1066, World War One,
Yeah.
and why the Spitfire was the best plane in the world in World War Two. That's literally what we were taught in history. I even said to my parents the other day, if I learned proper history and proper philosophy, I wouldn't have taken engineering as my career route.
Serious.
I wouldn't have pursued a degree in engineering, because I'm finding that my love for history and philosophy is far outweighing that. because I'm starting to learn the truth of things.
Okay, I'm with
When
you.
I'm looking at, by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not far right, I'm not far left. I like to consider myself as a centre person. So, as someone who's in that category, I find it my responsibility to educate myself on as much history as I can.
As possible.
Yeah.
To
Obviously,
broaden your knowledge, broaden your understanding.
exactly. The more I understand about the world,
Yeah.
and if when you get to that point, you understand that you're not in it all by yourself.
I'm with you.
You know what I mean? Like, you may feel like you're at the bottom of the rung, but I can point to you at a certain ethnic group. Say, for example, with the whole coronavirus
Yeah.
and Chinese people being racially abused because of that,
Yeah.
they might feel they're at the bottom of the rung.
I'm with you.
Asian people, when the whole when 9/11 happened, when all the terrorist attacks were happening, everything like that, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus. My dad always likes to say, like, flipping, oh, they can tell which one's which. People really can't, you know what I mean? Like, they can't tell which one's which.
I think
But-
that, like, I think me personally, I think people can tell, and I think you can tell when you've had, when you see, like for me personally, I've grown up around a lot of different ethnicities,
Yeah,
and because I've had that luxury, you can see the differences in,
yeah,
like say skin tones, like facial features, stuff like that. You can see the difference. I think it's ignorance when people say you can't see the difference.
yeah.
But I've heard people say like, oh,
But the majority of people, again, like I've said,
Yeah.
I'm Sikh,
yeah,
have assumed that I'm Muslim. But we're going off on a tangent here. But like,
Yeah.
when all the 9/11,
but then that's your religion.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So no one
Yeah.
should be able to really look at you and say
Exactly.
you're Sikh or you're Muslim.
And that's another point that we'll get to. But like, when the 9/11 attacks were happening, and all the other terrorist attacks were happening,
Yeah.
and there was a certain thing going on in especially around my area called Paki bashing,
Yeah,
where people were just going after Asian people and just beating them up for no apparent reason,
Yeah.
and blaming them for what was going on in the world. Asian people probably felt like they were at the bottom of the rung.
I'm with you.
And if you go by historical things, Jewish people felt like they were at the bottom of the bottom of the rung.
I'm with you.
So you understand when you find out that this history, this true world history,
Yeah,
that we're all in this together. At a certain point, we're all at the bottom of the rung. So I understand your frustrations. I understand them. And you know what? We should do something about them.
yeah.
But at the same time, you can't compare yourself to others because you don't know their full story.
I think that like
You know what I mean?
the one thing that I would say is, at least something that I was saying to someone at work the other day, is that like I think that a lot of people, when you talk about like Black Lives Matter and then you say like all lives matter, like you're saying that the far right are probably trying to claim all lives matter.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I
kind
mean.
of-
They've hijacked
It's
it.
kind of being used as a counter argument,
Exactly.
not to support,
Exactly.
in my opinion. And
It
I think that's
sounds
where the
better.
frustration comes.
It sounds better. Like if you hear one sounds like only Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Black Lives Matter only sounds like that on
Yeah.
surface. If
On
you take
surface level, yeah.
But you look deeper, it means everybody.
Yeah.
All Lives Matter on the surface sounds a lot better. But
Yeah.
if you look deeper, it's been hijacked by far right, bigoted people and ignorant people. Not saying all the far right are ignorant, bigoted.
Yeah, of course.
But like, but that's what I mean. When viewers see this on the news and social media and stuff like that, they'll cling to the one that sounds better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The one that they probably understand or identify
Exactly.
with on the surface level as well.
Exactly. Because not a lot of people want to look deeply into something. Like, we live in an age where everything's at a click of the button. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, it's a tough one because it's a yes and no answer. Because it's just like, yes, I'd like to believe it,
Yeah.
but going off my experience, but only my experience. Again, it could be I'm generalizing everything,
Yeah.
but from my experience, not really. I've had, again, that person who said to me, "Oh, Asian people haven't had it bad." Well, you don't know that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Sometimes I think as well, when we have dialogue, we have discussion, and we have opposing opinions, people enter it too much with the mindset that
I'm right, you're wrong.
exactly,
Yeah.
like not trying to find an understanding.
It's a compromise. Everything's a compromise. This is why I'm fairly centre in my beliefs, because in between the right and the left, there is only the truth. In the middle, there's always the truth.
Yeah.
And like, say if you have two differing opinions, you'll find the truth in the compromise.
I'm with you.
You know what I mean?